Hello, welcome to a lecture on middle childhood cognitive development. Piaget's theory, the concrete operational stage. During the concrete operational stage, from about 7 to 11 years, thought is more logical, flexible, and organized than it is during early childhood. The ability to pass conservation tasks provides clear evidence of operations. Children become capable of decentration, focusing on several aspects of a problem and relating them, rather than just centering on one aspect of a problem. They also demonstrate reversibility, the capacity to think through a series of steps and then mentally reverse direction, returning to the starting point. Between ages 7 and 10, children pass Piaget's class inclusion problem. They're more aware of classification hierarchies and can focus on relations between a general category and two specific categories at the same time. School-age children develop seriation, the ability to order items along a quantitative dimension, such as length or weight. When I was a kid and I would get out my crayons, I would sometimes line them up in the order from shortest to longest before I started coloring my paper. I don't know if everyone did that, just something that I did. School-age children's understanding of space is more accurate than that of preschoolers, as is evident from changes in children's cognitive maps. Preschoolers and young school-age children include landmarks on their maps, like Grandma's house, the ice cream place, but their arrangement is not always accurate. Around age 9, children's maps show landmarks along an organized route of travel. So you can see it's increasing in ability. At the end of middle childhood, children form an accurate overall view of a large-scale space and can readily draw and read maps. In many non-Western communities, people rarely use maps, relying on information from people along their route for wayfinding. So, just going out and saying, hey, I'm looking for such and such, and someone will give them the information that gets them a little bit closer, and then someone else will give them more information when they ask again. Limitations of concrete operational thought include when children think in an organized, logical fashion only when dealing with concrete information that they can perceive directly. Their mental operations work poorly when applied to abstract ideas. For example, time, or obviously theories. When my niece was younger, she, to say, Lucy, we're going to go in 30 minutes, that didn't mean much to her. But we would say, in one Barney, she was a big fan of Barney, the big purple dinosaur. Don't know if you remember him. But we'd say we'd go in one Barney. And my newest nephew, we now say, we're going to go in one Paw Patrol. I'm not saying you need to watch either Paw Patrol or Barney. I'm just giving an example of more concreteness, less abstract. Children show a continuum of acquisition or gradual mastery of logical concepts. Recent evidence indicates that recent research indicates that cultural and school practices influence mastery of Piaget tasks. In village societies, conservation is often delayed, suggesting that taking part in relevant everyday activities helps children master conservation and other problems. The experience of going to school seems to promote the mastery of Jean Piaget's tasks, but certain informal, non-school experiences can also foster operational thought. Some investigators have concluded that the forms of logic required by tasks of Piaget do not emerge spontaneously in children, but rather are heavily influenced by training, context, and cultural conditions. Some of the neo-Piagetian theorists argue that the development of operational thinking can best be understood in terms of expansion of information processing capacity rather than a sudden shift to a new stage. With practice, cognitive schemes demand less attention, freeing up space in working memory so children can focus on combining old schemes and generating new ones. Children's experiences vary widely, affecting their acquisition of specific central conceptual struggles. Disagreement continues over whether development of organized rational thought occurs because of a continuous improvement in logical skills or discontinuous reconstructing of children's thinking. That is two different ways on how this development is organized. Cognitive development in middle childhood is probably best explained by a blend of Jean Piaget's tasks and information processing ideas, which information processing is coming up next. The information processing perspective examines separate aspects of thinking, such as gains in capacity of working memory, speed of thinking, and other facets of executive function that contribute vitally to academic learning. Executive function are the mental skills that help get things done. So, for example, paying attention, managing time. In middle childhood, executive function undergoes marked improvement, and its various aspects become more strongly interrelated. Heredity combines with environmental factors to influence executive function. Working memory benefits from increased efficiency of thinking, as time needed to process information declines rapidly between ages 6 to 12 in diverse cultures. Children with persistent learning difficulties in reading and math are often deficient in working memory. So if you think about that in a school setting here in the US, the student might have difficulties with reading and math and with working memory, which are vital in both of those academic subjects and in others. So there's multiple things that are impacting their ability to do well in that classroom. Children from poverty-stricken families are more likely to score low on working memory tasks, an effect of chronic stress, which can impair brain structure and function. During middle childhood, attention becomes more selective, flexible, and planful. Through the elementary years, children become better at deliberately attending to relevant aspects of a task and and getting rid of irrelevant responses. And this continues to improve. Planning on multi-step tasks improves over the years, with gains in both sequential and advanced planning. Children learn much about planning by collaborating with more expert planners, but adult-controlled activities may rob children of opportunities to plan. So if you are an adult who is planning these activities, make sure that it gives children some opportunity to plan and collaborate. ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactive disorder, impacts some school-age children. Memory strategies improve during the school years as children use both rehearsal, that is, repeating information to oneself, and organization, grouping related items together. So this might be when you see in the school-age children, they'll bring home kind of a mental map or a web organization. It's providing that visual organization for them of the greater concepts or the grouping of the concepts together. I often recommend it to college-age students as well. If you're interested in knowing more about this, let me know. As children become familiar with strategies and gain in working memory capacity, they combine several strategies, leading to improvements in memory. By the end of middle childhood, children start to use elaboration, that is, creating a relationship between two or more pieces of information that are not members of the same category. By combining items into meaningful chunks, it allows children to retrain and retrieve more information. So that would be, grouping information in a way that makes sense. During middle childhood, the long-term knowledge base grows larger and becomes organized into increasingly elaborate hierarchical structured networks. Children who are expert in an area acquire knowledge in that area quickly and actively use what they know to add more, so they develop a broad knowledge base. Memory also occurs as a natural byproduct of participation in daily activities. Cross-cultural research indicates that people who have no formal schooling do not use or benefit from instruction in memory strategies. Children in developed nations get so much practice using memory strategies that they don't refine other memory techniques that rely on cues available in everyday life, such as spatial location. Children's theory of mind becomes more refined during middle childhood as children develop metacognition, thinking about thinking, if you will. Unlike preschoolers, older children view the mind as an active, constructive agent that selects and transforms information. School-age children grasp relationships between mental activities and are aware that people can extend their knowledge by making mental inferences. By age 6 to 7, children realize that people form beliefs about other people's beliefs and that these second-order beliefs can be wrong or against what they believe. Appreciation of second-order false beliefs requires a form of perspective taking called recursive thought, the ability to reason simultaneously about what two or more people are thinking. This, of course, if you think about when kids in the middle childhood developmental range, have an argument or a disagreement on the playground. Having the ability to have recursive thought is extremely helpful. School-age children are far more conscious of mental strategies than preschoolers. School-age children are not yet good at cognitive self-regulation, that is, the process of continuously monitoring progress toward a goal, checking outcomes, or redirecting unsuccessful efforts. Sometimes you'll see in different classrooms teachers trying to help students improve their self-regulation, especially with like time on task. They'll have a little chart on their desk and the teacher, at various intervals will say stop, and then the student has to check in with themselves. Was I on task? And give themselves a little plus or whatever symbol they have worked out. Parents and teachers can foster self-regulation by pointing out features of a task and suggesting the effectiveness of various strategies. So that sentence is just reinforcing the example that I had just given. Children who acquire effective self-regulatory skills develop a sense of academic self-efficacy. Reading should be taught using the necessary components on a consistent basis, and it can include phonics-based instruction and a whole language approach. Early mathematics teaching builds on and enriches children's informal knowledge of number concepts and counting. Children acquire basic math facts through a combination of frequent practice, experimentation with computational techniques, so giving students a couple of different ways on how to compute, reasoning about number concepts, and teaching that conveys effective strategies. Around age 6, IQ becomes more stable and correlates moderately well with academic achievement. Most intelligence tests provide an overall score, which is the IQ, and it represents general intelligence or reasoning ability, and separate scores measuring specific mental abilities. Group-administered tests, which permit large numbers of students to be tested at once, are useful for identifying children who require more extensive evaluation with individually administered tests. The Stanford-Binet intelligence scales is for individuals from age 2 to adulthood. Now, keep in mind, the IQ doesn't become more stable until about the age of 6, so keep in mind if you want to be giving it to a 2-year-old. It assesses general intelligence as well as 5 intellectual factors. The knowledge and quantitative reasoning factors emphasize culturally loaded, fact-oriented information. The visual processing, working memory, and basic information processing factors are assumed to be less culturally biased. So years ago, and this is, decades ago, there were some references to like Disney princesses and stuff like that. That would, at the time, it was very culturally American because Disney World and Disneyland were the only ones that existed. So if you were giving this to a child who had just recently moved to the US or something like that, then they weren't going to score as well. And the Disney is just one example. There are others. The WISC, or Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, is widely used for 6 through 16-year-olds. There is another one that is appropriate for children 2 years and 6 months through 7 years, and that's the Wechsler Preschool and Primary Scale of Intelligence. The WISC was designed to downplay cultural dependent information. Sternberg's theory of successful intelligence is made up of 3 broad interacting intelligences. Analytical intelligence consists of the information processing components that underlie all intelligent acts. Creative intelligence involves generating useful solutions to new problems. Practical intelligence is a goal-oriented activity aimed at adapting to, shaping, or selecting environments. This theory emphasizes the complexity of intelligent behavior and the limitation of current intelligence tests. Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences defines intelligence in terms of distinct sets of processing operations that permit individuals to engage in a wide range of culturally valued activities. Gardner believed that each intelligence has a unique neurological basis and a distinct course of development, but that a lengthy process of education is required to transform any raw potential into a mature social role. Gardner's lists of abilities have yet to be firmly grounded in research, which is important to note. His intelligence have been helpful in efforts to understand and nurture children's special talents. Gardner's theory is similarly related to the universal design for learning, which has 3 main principles, and it allows students to interact or engage with material and content in multiple ways and to demonstrate their learning in multiple and varied ways. In comparison of IQ scores of ethnic and SES groups, American Black children and adolescents score, on average, 10 to 12 IQ points below American white children, although this difference has been shrinking over the past several decades. The gap between middle SES, socioeconomic status, and low SES children, about 9 points, accounts for some, but not all, of the ethnic IQ differences. Adoption research confirms that heredity and environment jointly contribute to IQ. African American children adopted into economically well-off white homes during the first year of life scored 20 to 30 points higher on intelligence tests than typical children growing up in a low-income Black community. Improved education, health, and technology probably underlie the Flynn effect, steady gains in IQ from one generation to the next in diverse cultures. Debate continues over whether ethnic differences in IQ reflect test bias, which occurs when a test sample knowledge and skills that not all groups of children have had equal opportunity to learn. Ethnic minority families often foster unique language skills that do not match the expectations of most classrooms and testing situations. Many ethnic minority parents without extensive education prefer a collaborative style of communication when completing tasks with children, in contrast to the hierarchical style of communication found in classrooms and tests. Many researchers argue that IQ tests are affected by specific information acquired as part of majority culture upbringing. Even nonverbal tasks, such as spatial reasoning, depend on learning opportunities. For example, opportunities to play video games that require fast responding and mental rotation of visual images. Interestingly enough, the sheer amount of time a child spends in school can help predict IQ. Stereotype threat, the fear of being judged on the basis of a negative stereotype, can trigger anxiety that interferes with performance. Over middle childhood, children, especially those from stigmatized groups, become increasingly conscious of ethnic stereotypes. Many experts acknowledge that IQ scores can underestimate the intelligence of children from ethnic minority groups and believe that test scores should be combined with assessments of children's adaptive behavior. Language development, always an interesting topic. During middle childhood, children develop metalinguistic awareness, the ability to think about language as a system. During the elementary years, vocabulary increases 4-fold. Isn't that amazing? 4-fold. eventually exceeding comprehension of 40,000 words. Conversations with more expert speakers and independent reading contribute enormously to vocabulary growth. Hence, why your elementary teachers were always encouraging you to read. School-age children can appreciate the multiple meanings of words, enabling them to comprehend metaphors, to enjoy riddles and puns. Appreciation of subtle grammatical distinctions is supported by improved ability to analyze and reflect on language. Improvements in pragmatics, the communicative side of language, occur in middle childhood. Children can adapt to the needs of listeners in challenging communicative situations and become better at resolving inconsistencies in others' messages. Children's narratives increase in organization, detail, and expressiveness. It's often why, when you're teaching some aspects of reading, you will point out to kids there's the beginning of a story and the middle of the story and the end of the story. And then when they are, growing in their ability to tell a narrative, then they will start to be organizing it in that fashion as well. Because children pick up the narrative styles of significant adults in their lives, their narratives vary widely across cultures. An estimated 22% of U.S. children speak a language other than English at home. Children who learn both languages in infancy and early childhood attain early language milestones according to a typical timetable. That was a concern. School-age children who acquire a second language generally take 5 to 7 years to attain speaking and writing skills on a par with those of native speaking age mates. Bilingual children and adults sometimes engage in code switching, producing an utterance in one language that contains one or more guessed words from the other, without violating the grammar of either language. Children who become fluent in two languages develop denser gray matter in the areas of the left hemisphere devoted to language, and they exhibit an increase in executive processing. Bilingual children outperform others on tests of executive function and other skills. This became a concern with, would we teach only in English? Can we continue to develop another language along with English? And at present, public opinion and educational practice in U.S. favor English-only instruction. But when both languages are integrated into the curriculum, minority children are more involved in learning and acquire the second language more easily. Experiencing small classes from kindergarten through third grade predicts higher achievement in regular-sized classmates from fourth through ninth grades. Teachers in small classes spend less time disciplining and more time teaching and giving individual attention. In a traditional classroom, the teacher is the sole authority, while children are relatively passive. Their progress is evaluated by how well they keep pace with a uniform set of standards for their grade. A constructivist classroom includes learning centers in which individuals and small groups solve self-chosen problems with guidance and support from teachers. Students' progress is evaluated in relation to their own prior development. Popular constructivists include Maria Montessori, Jean Piaget, Lev Vygotsky. Policy often dictates, national policy dictates the type of classroom that are, pervasive in that country. Older elementary school children in traditional classrooms have a slight edge in achievement test scores, but constructivist settings are associated with gains in critical thinking, greater social and moral maturity, and more positive attitudes toward school. Research reveals no long-term benefits for delaying a child's school entry. Rather, young first graders appear to benefit from on-time enrollment. Vygotsky's social cultural theory inspired the development of social constructivist classrooms, in which children appropriate the knowledge and strategies generated through working together and becoming competent, contributing members of their classroom community. Vygotsky's emphasis on the social origins of complex mental activities has inspired several educational themes, that is, teachers and children as partners in learning, experience with many types of symbolic communication and meaningful activities, and teaching adapted to each child's zone of proximal development. In reciprocal teaching, a teacher and 2 to 4 students form a cooperative group and take turns leading dialogues on the content of a text passage. Reciprocal teaching creates a zone of proximal development in which children learn to scaffold one another's progress and acquire skills needed for success in everyday life. In communities of learners, teachers guide the overall process of learning, but no other distinction is made between adult and child contributors. All participate in joint endeavors and have the authority to define and resolve problems. This approach broadens the concept of the zone of proximal development to encompass multiple interrelated zones of collaboration, which I would say is pretty important. I want you to think about your schooling through middle childhood. Was it mostly a traditional setting? And if so, were there opportunities that maybe included types of activities that you might see for community of learners or reciprocal teaching? And if so, or not, how do you think that impacted not only your schooling, but your cognitive development? Students describe good teachers as caring, helpful, and stimulating, but many U.S. teachers emphasize repetitive drill over higher level thinking. Well-behaved, high-achieving pupils get more support and praise from teachers, whereas unruly students receive more criticism. Educational, self-fulfilling prophecies occur when children start to live up to teachers' positive or negative attitudes toward them. When developing groups, be mindful and flexible in your grouping practices. Virtually all public schools in industrialized nations have integrated computers into their instructional programs and can access the internet. Computer use is associated with academic progress. And although video games with violent content are harmful, gameplay is also rich in cognitive benefits, including gains in eye-hand coordination, visual processing speed, attention, strategic thinking, and spatial reasoning. Schools need to ensure that girls and economically disadvantaged students have many opportunities to benefit from the diverse, cognitively enriching aspects of screen media technology. U.S. legislation mandates that schools place children who require special supports for learning in the least restrictive environment, or LRE, you might hear it referred to as, to help meet their educational needs. And this is on a continuum. The least restrictive environment is the general education classroom. The most restricted environment would be a school or facility specifically for students with fill in the blank. Emotional behavior disturbances or mental health issues, where the only kids in that school have those needs. Although some students benefit academically from inclusion, which is when you put kids with identified needs in a general education classroom, many others do best when they receive instruction in a resource room for part of the day and in the regular classroom for the remainder. Gifted children display exceptional intellectual and other strengths. A child with high potential for creativity can be designated as gifted. Definitions of giftedness have been extended to include talent. Gifted children thrive when parents are warm and sensitive, provide a stimulating home life, and arrange for appropriate teachers. Gifted children thrive in learning environments that permit them to choose topics for extended projects, take intellectual risks, reflect on ideas, and interact with like-minded peers. I should mention, I would recommend this, or an appropriate version of this for all children. Allow them to choose topics when you can. Have them reflect on their ideas, etc. In international studies of reading, mathematics, and science achievement, U.S. students typically perform at or below the international averages. Instruction in the U.S. is less challenging, more focused on absorbing facts, and less focused on high-level reasoning and critical thinking than in other countries. The U.S. is far less equitable than top-achieving countries in the quality of education it provides its low SES and ethnic minority students. Asian countries typically include cultural aspects in their instruction and schooling, including effort and a sense of moral obligation, etc. So those are some highlights about middle childhood cognitive growth. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.